What is the second-hand market like for time trial and triathlon bikes at the end of 2023? Well, I've come down to We Buy Cycle in Derby to figure that out. Let's have a look at some bikes. Now, I'm currently going through a bit of a change in my time trial stable, so it's good for me to get a handle on what are things worth nowadays, what are people paying for these sorts of bikes. So I'm going to have a look at what We Buy Cycle have got in stock and just talk about what I think about them. So first up, a Cannondale Slice. Now, these things are a bit of a blast from the past. This is a 2015 model, but bikes haven't changed that much in a few years. The basic concept of a time trial bike is still the same. The majority of your aero drag is from your body, so a small part of it is the bike. Now, this is up for £1,795, and what do you get for that money? Well, carbon frame, carbon fork, Di2 Ultegra 6870, so it's not 12 speed, it is 11 speed, but you've got electronic gears on a time trial bike with some midsection carbon wheels for less than £2,000. That is fairly good. Now, it's a 5236 chain set and it looks like an 1125 cassette, so it hasn't got a massive range in gears, but if you're using this at your Club 10 or you're time trialing or you're doing triathlons on reasonably flat courses, that could be the gearing for you. Moving up to the cockpit, now this is a more budget-friendly cockpit. It is an aluminium base bar. It's not super aero profile, but it is still a bit flat towards the outside. Aluminium extensions, some armrests, and lots of risers. Now, I actually really like this because of its lower spec, the base bar is round and the risers clamp onto it. What that actually means is it's really easy to adjust, so you can just loosen the bolts off, adjust the angle of the armrest and extension, and then tighten it back up again. There's no fancy spaces needed. You don't need to mess around with all that. It's really easy to change. I do have these zip pads on another bike I've got as well, and they really do lock you in well. It is rim brake, of course, but the brakes are direct mount, so they do actually work. The rear brake is down by the bottom bracket, which is quite aero, and the front brake is the aero profiled Shimano Ultegra brake caliper. So for less than £2,000, I don't think this is a bad shout, but let's have a look at what else is in stock. Feel free to let me know down below as well. What do you reckon is the best value time trial triathlon bike at the end of 2023? Now, coming in a little bit cheaper is this Orbea Ordu. This is £1,495 and a bit of a different spec to that bike we just looked at. So again, a carbon frame, but you can really tell this bike is a bit more modern. The deeper tube profiles really, sing the praises of like wind tunnel testing in recent years. Looking up to the cockpit, it's got a carbon base bar that is a lot deeper, so probably a little bit more aero. Carbon extensions, like it is just a little bit more premium spec, I should imagine. However, the group set is mechanical and not Di2. Depends what your preferences are, depends what your priorities are. Similar sort of range in the gearing, so you're not really at an advantage or a disadvantage there. In terms of the actual cockpit usability, now although you've still got the more aero base bar, you do still have that easier adjustment that we talked about on the previous bike, and that you can just tilt these bars up and down because they bolt onto or clamp onto the rounded base bar, but then you've got the mechanical shifters at the end. Now these are like clicky ones, they're not just friction shifters, so you're still shifting well. And in my experience, my first bike was a mechanical group set TT bike, and when it works, it works. When it doesn't, it doesn't. As long as you get it set up by a competent mechanic, which these are, there's nothing against mechanical group sets. If anything, they're a bit more reliable because you don't have to rely on batteries and power. Now, the other advantages of a slightly more modern time trial or triathlon bike is you get a little bit of integration. So on the top tube here, there's two bolts there. You can bolt like a food storage bag to it, or a box for your gels and stuff. On the back, you've got a little tool storage bag. Now, this does only clamp to the seat post, so whether you could retrofit this to other bikes or not, I don't know. But it gives you somewhere to put your spares that you don't have to worry about, that's not on a saddle bag and so on. It leaves you with a bit more space. There's plenty of bottle cage mounts. There's actually 3 holes on the down tube, so you can mount your bottle wherever you'd like, and then 2 on the seat post. So again, you can put a bottle on there. So this, I think, for a first time trial or triathlon bike specifically, is absolutely fine. That integration is great to have, and we're going to go on to another bike in a minute that's a bit more integrated, but it gives you options. I wouldn't worry about this wiring at the front, like it doesn't look the prettiest, but on the front of the bike, you've got internal cabling from the shifters down the extensions, internal cabling on the base bar. That's where the majority of the wind is hitting. Yes, it'll be, costing you a little tiny bit of power at the back there, but nowhere near as much as if there were cables hanging out at the front. So I think it looks pretty cool, and at that price point, I think that's pretty good value. Again, more carbon clincher wheels, so good wheels for for racing and for training. Yes, they're not the fastest wheel set you could ever buy, but they're going to be okay for you going out for a ride and then your club events and whatever you'd want to do, really. So yeah, Orbea Ordu. On to the next one. Okay, so bike number 3, probably the most modern and most integrated bike that is for sale here. Now, this is a Ribble Ultra Tri, it's a 2023 model. It is the disc brake bike. It's the only disc brake time trial triathlon bike that we've looked at today. So a little bit of a different vibe and slightly more modern, but let's have a look at the key differences. Now again, we're seeing a mechanical group set, Shimano 105, but it is a newer 105. So there's a lot of trickle down technology with Shimano. So if you get the next year's model, but it's a lower spec, you're probably getting the year before's higher spec and so on. And I echo my comments from earlier, if it's set up correctly, it will work fine. It's a compact crank on the front, so 50-34, and an 11-32 cassette on the back, so a really good range. This is a size small frame, so if somebody is small and isn't hitting 30-35 miles an hour, then you perhaps don't need the gearing, but it depends on the sort of rider who's going to buy this sort of thing. Now, Ribble are quite good at doing like custom paint schemes, and even not custom, but you can select your own. This is a really nice metallic blue with a little pink fleck on the fork. I'm a sucker for a blue, and I do really like this colour scheme. Now, moving on to the rest of the features of the bike. So we've just seen on the Orbea that it has some tool storage behind the seat post, but it had it like clipped onto the seat post. This is actually built into the frame, so this box here bolts onto the back of the frame, so it is integrated. You can put your spares in there and whatever you would like. On the top tube, the same sort of thing as a previous bike. Now, that you would be able to bolt something onto that previous bike, but this is bolted on in the same way, but it does auto integrate these cables. So whereas you've seen on the previous bikes that the cables are sort of strewn everywhere, this is tucked into that top tube plate there and then goes inside that sort of food compartment and into the frame. It's a little bit cleaner, it's a little bit neater. I wouldn't worry about it in the grand scheme of things. It is a small difference, but it's nice to have, isn't it? You can fit a couple of gels in that top tube there, or put whatever you'd want in there. The big difference for this bike though is integrated hydration. Now, integrated hydration for me has been hit and miss if it works or if it doesn't, but I do like having it there as an option. I'd always have that there and a bottle on the down tube and a bottle behind the seat, just so you're not relying on any one thing. But being able to refill it as well, that has a hole in there, you can just refill on the fly, and having a straw to be able to drink from is a nice addition, I think, and is good to have that integrated. Now, different to the previous two bikes, it does not have a flat base bar, so as we get more modern, the bikes are more integrated and more, fitted per manufacturer. So this will be a Ribble base bar, which is made for Ribbles. So we can see here, there's a solid stack bolted on there. If you want to change the angle of those armrests, you've either got to get some adjustable spacers or some angled spacers, and you can buy all those things, but it's just something else to have to buy and something else to have to fit, whereas the lower spec or cheaper bikes, you would change that without any cost. So I'm a bit torn because that does look better to me, but does it look better enough to spend money on? I don't really know. And again, the extensions are very ssimilar, mechanical shifters on the end. The brakes look different because the reservoirs for the hydraulic fluid are on top of the shifters, so you can tell that it's just shaped a little bit differently. I don't think that'll make any difference with regards to aerodynamics, to be honest. It just looks pretty much the same. And there are 140 rotors front and back, which is plenty of stopping power. Wheels, again, just shallow wheels. I think these are actually aluminium wheels. And they're not quite as deep as the other two bikes we've seen, but again, we're splitting hairs really. For around £2,000 or just under £2,000, this is probably my pick of the bunch. Now, there was talk a few years ago of the rim brake Ribble Ultras just being Neil Pride frames restickered, which essentially they were, with some added bits on. I think with the disc brake models, they have worked a bit of development, like these rear stays are a slightly different shape, for example, and I think they have actually put some development into it, but I don't know that for a fact, so you're best checking it out yourself if you are unsure. But I think that's a cool little bike for the money, and yeah, I don't think you'll go far wrong with a first triathlon time trial bike. Now finally, I know this doesn't have any wheels or a group set or brakes, but this is a bike because it is a bike frame. It's a Vitus AO disc frame set, and this is the cheapest offering because it doesn't have those things at £1,000. Now, this sort of thing is right up my street. I do enjoy building bikes and sourcing your own parts, and I know there's a lot of people out there that do. So what do you get for £1,000? Well, essentially this, but having had a quick look at it, the stem is all integrated in terms of you can run your cables internally in the stem. You've got some angled adjustment built into the prime base bar. So Vitus being a Wiggle brand now, I believe. That's all under the same company. There's lots of stack adjustment in there, and you've essentially got a blank canvas to work from. As I said, it is disc brake, so you will need to get a disc brake group set, but this is a good place to start from, isn't it? If you've already got a bike perhaps and you're just looking to change your frame, it's easier to get a frame rather than having to buy a bike and strip all the parts off of it yourself. You can see the seat posts got loads of adjustment on the rail, and yeah, something good to start from. This sort of thing as well, through my experiences, when somebody's selling something like this, the audience isn't as big. So like if you were to ring me by cycle up and say, look, I've seen this video on TriathlonDan, I fancy this, but I'll only give you 20 quid for it. Maybe they do some sort of deal, you know, that sort of thing. I'm not saying they would do, I don't actually ask, but that sort of thing I think stands you in good stead with this sort of product. So there we go, that's my experience of what the time trial and triathlon bike market is like at the minute. I have recently bought a frame set myself, which I did fairly well on, I think, but I haven't yet tried to sell anything, so I don't know what that side of the market is like. I think places like this are good because if you're uncertain about spending money on eBay or Facebook Marketplace, there's places like this that sell bikes and things second hand. You get a warranty and you get a place to go back to if there are any problems, whereas obviously on the marketplace you don't, but maybe buying bikes from here is more expensive than Facebook Marketplace. I don't really know, I haven't compared it that much, but yeah, hope you enjoy. If you've got anything to feed into that, drop it in the comment section down below. Cheers.